Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to offer my greetings and welcome everyone this evening. So um, one of the things that lists of Dhamma that come up um, when you're when you're getting listening to Dhamma, you're listening to a lot of stuff. One of these lists that comes up, you can come up quite frequently, is this list of the 10 paramis. So generally, these 10 paramis. So paramis mean is usually translated as perfections or spiritual perfections. I prefer spiritual qualities or spiritual personality traits, and this is this list of these 10 qualities, these 10 um, spiritual qualities that we're working on developing that are going to help us with our practice and help us to not just help us with our practice, help us keep to our practice and help us eventually attain nibbana or enlightenment, the full release from all suffering. So, a lot of times when we hear about paramis, about these 10 spiritual qualities, a lot of times we generally think of Mahayana Buddhism or the path of the Bodhisattva. So, not working on trying to become enlightened in this time, but trying to build up our spiritual qualities and build these up to become enlightened in future lives. So in Mahayana, as far as I understand, they don't have 10 paramis. They have six paramis. Their list is a little different because in the suttas, this list never comes up together. The Buddha doesn't sit the monks down and, okay, monks, I'm gonna teach you these 10 paramis. But they were kind of put together, and this list came together a little later on. So a lot of it is based on the Jataka tales. So these are these stories, these of past lives of the Buddha before he became a Buddha. And so some of them, uh, can come off as a little more teaching stories to teach about different qualities. So in different ones, him and different disciples of his are, different animals at some times, or they're humans. And throughout these stories, he's building and perfecting these paramis. And in the last 10 lives before he became the Buddha, each one he was perfecting one of these 10 paramis, these 10 spiritual qualities. So because of this, because they don't necessarily appear as a list like this in the suttas, and because they're generally connected to the idea of the bodhisattva path and just building these up and not becoming enlightened here and now in this lifetime, a lot of teachers or a lot of scholars in the West just disregard them. They just throw them out, don't pay any attention to them. And when I was new to practice, new to Buddhism, I'd heard some, well, excuse me, I'd heard some teachings from, some Western Dhamma teachers, and they taught like this, like don't worry about those. It's just it's more of a Mahayana thing. We're just going to focus on becoming enlightened here and now. But then after becoming a monk, one of the things you notice is that, Thailand, a lot of the Kruba Ajahns, a lot of these, really respected monks, are supposed to be enlightened and have incredible practices. And they teach a lot about the Paramis. Like you hear these Paramis and the idea of Barami coming up again and again. And it's really part of Thai culture. sometimes, in the general way we use them, we can sometimes use it wrong. So sometimes you'll hear people say something like, if say someone offers you a lot of coffee, they may be like, "Oh, you've got a lot of coffee, bar me," which isn't the right use of this word because coffee is not on the list of 10 Paramis. And so it's not one we have to develop. But so that sometimes that the word can get misused and almost meant like some kind of accumulated karma or good karma, some kind of merit you have. But this list of 10 is they're about these, these qualities we're developing within ourselves. And the longer I've been a monk and the more I've practiced and the more I've seen, in myself and also people around me, the more I've really seen the importance of these 10 paramis and of these qualities and how much they can help us with our practice. Or you can see some people when these haven't been developed or they've been neglected, certain ones, it can really affect their practice or make them fall away from the practice. So in our daily lives, these are these 10 qualities, we can develop at any time. We can take any situation in our life. So if we're in a situation in life where we feel, at work or interacting with other people, and, we feel we can't practice then, we can't meditate then, but we can still use this as an opportunity to develop a barami, to develop one of these qualities. And then we turn that experience in life into an opportunity to practice. And so these 10 baramis are the first one is dana, which is generosity. The second one is sila, which is morality. The third one is nekama, which is renunciation. The fourth one is panya, which is wisdom. The fifth one is virya, which is energy or effort. The sixth one is kanti, which is patience or patient endurance. The seventh one is sacha, usually translated as truthfulness. I prefer translating as honesty. The eighth one is aditana, or this making a resolution or making a determination. The ninth one is metta, or loving kindness. And the 10th one is upekkha, or equanimity. So you hear these different qualities, they get talked about a lot, throughout Dhamma talks, throughout the suttas, and in different places of practice. But here they've been brought all together. So the first one, dana, this is generosity. So this, we've talked about, here before. This is that when we develop generosity, so this can be giving, giving material things, giving material support, can also be helping someone else. It doesn't have to be just giving an object. It can be giving a hand, helping someone else out. And so this is the first one, in this list of 10 baramis. And you can see that because with these baramis, some we're all going to have them develop to different amounts. So these are things we can, it's not just set, like we either have it or we don't, or we have it a certain amount or we don't. These are things, we can develop like everything else in Dhamma practice. These are things we can actively develop and improve for ourselves. So you can see some people who naturally have a really well-developed dana barami. And you see that, giving is just very easy to them. You're just no problem. Oh yeah, I'll help you out with that. Oh, I can give you that. Yeah, sure. No problem. I can give you this. And then you can see for some other people who it's not developed as well, that giving or giving up something to someone else, giving material support or just giving a hand can be very difficult for them. And But again, if we put our effort into developing this, actually actively practicing dana, practicing generosity, we'll find that this quality in us starts growing and starts developing. And then it'll hit the point where in Thai they'd say like khao ni sai, like it becomes part of our character. And we just become like this very generous person. And then the next one is sila, which this is our morality or our moral conduct. So a lot of times, this is all to do with um, our actions of body and speech. And so, the very basic we level we hold is to try to keep at least the five precepts. And and again, sometimes in the beginning, it may be very difficult. Like there may be certain areas of sila we have difficulties around. I think probably one of the most difficult ones sometimes for people is right speech, you know, not not being too gossipy, not lying and stuff. And but again, as we practice it and it becomes more normal, um, it again becomes part of us, and it becomes just this kind of natural thing. So it's one of those things you see living in the monastery a long period because truthfulness is so important, like not lying. This is a really important thing for monks. The Buddha spoke a lot about not lying, and and for us, of course, it's breaking a rule when you lie. So you just, after living in the monastery, just the idea of telling a lie is just, it's just unthinkable. And it becomes the same for everyone. But then you might become a little naive because you assume everyone's telling the truth to you because you're so used to living in a community where everyone's telling the truth and not lying. And but you can see this in life too. Like I've met people in life, not even monks, just like lay people who, just naturally have this really strong sila barmi. Like, they would never lie. They couldn't, it's almost like they're incapable of lying. They couldn't do it to save themselves, or that they would never harm anyone. They would never do something to harm someone. They would never steal, or ones who just the idea of, intoxicants, just would be unthinkable. I remember talking to more than one person, and they said that they've never, drank alcohol in their life or anything like that. And they just said, what's the point of it? That seems so silly. Why would I want to do that? And you can see again just different levels of these baramis that people are coming in with. And so the third one is Nekama Barami. So this is that renunciation and that being able to give up stuff, to renounce stuff, which can be very, for some people, very difficult. Some people are very attached to things, to having things, and it's one of the things you can see for some people it becomes very like they're not able to say become a monk or a nun because of this. They're just not able to give up their stuff, able to give up the money. Whereas when you ordain, you have to give up everything. So you've got to have a bit of this nekama barami, and then yeah, as you live that lifestyle, you're going to develop it even more. But one of the ways that we can work on developing this, and this is a traditional way we work on developing this barmi in Buddhist countries, is for our weekly observance days, which are on the full moon, the new moon, or the half moons. So in Thai, we call these one pra. And a tradition that people will do is they'll come to the monastery for the day. So they'll come, right early in the morning. We have our meal very early in the morning. They'll listen to a Dhamma talk, and then they'll undertake the 8 precepts. So the first 5 precepts are about sila, so not killing, not stealing, avoiding sexual misconduct, not lying, and not taking intoxicants. But then the next 3 ones, when people undertake the 8 precepts, these are about are more about the nekama, that renunciation. So it's giving up eating in the afternoons. It's giving up all types of beautification and adornment. So not wearing makeup or perfumes or jewelry or any type of adornment like that, avoiding singing and dancing. And then the eighth one is avoiding high and luxurious beds and seats. So again, this is a bit of a renunciation. So what people will do is they'll come to the monastery and they'll undertake this and they'll do it for a day. So they'll start in the morning, and there's a bit of ceremony around it, and people will, chant along and undertake these 8 precepts. And then they'll keep it right through the whole day, through the night. They'll stay in the monastery for the day. And then the next morning, they'll relinquish these 8 precepts. And so what happens is when you start practicing like this, over a period of time, um, you're really developing this barmi, this quality of being able to renounce things. So even though you're only going for one day at a time, if you practice this, once a week for 7 years, that means you had an entire year in that period of keeping the 8 precepts. So you'll see people will do this and working on developing this renunciation barmi. The next barmi, the fifth one, is anya, or wisdom. And so you can see, again, this is, you hear a lot in Dhammas, this developing wisdom, and we're always working on developing wisdom. And so again, this is something, we work on it and we hear a lot about in the Dhamma talks. And the fifth one is about virya, or being able to put forth that effort. And so again, this is one of those ones where you can see some people naturally have a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and they can really, they'll really go full on into things. And other people, it's maybe a little lazier, not so diligent, and it's harder to be able to put forth that effort. But over time and with training, again, it becomes easier and it becomes more natural to do it. So in the monastery, in the style of monasteries of Ajahn Chah, so at places like Wat Pah Nanachat, this is one of the reasons why, it's set up as specifically as a training monastery. So it's to help support people to be able to put forth that effort and to really um, develop that army and that quality of being able to put forth effort. So, we all come together and practice together. So, at three o'clock in the morning, the bell rings. 3:30, we've all got to be in the sala chanting and then meditating together. And so we have a lot of these things throughout the day, and just having that community support us, it makes it so much easier to put forth effort. And so one of the things, like at Wat Nanachat, there's no like punishment if you miss the morning chanting. But one of the things is all your friends are coming. You don't want to be that odd man out. And also you just have to, if you miss the morning chanting, just pay respects to whoever the senior monk is and just say that you had missed the chanting. So it's not any punishment or anything, just kind of this little acknowledgement of that. But a lot of times that can be enough to help you, encourage you to put forth that effort. I remember when I was a novice and I was getting ready for my ordination, there's a lot of work we have to do to get ready for the ordination. So we've got to learn, all the ordination chanting. We've got to sew all of our robes, and we've got to make the dye for the robes, and then dye the robes. And we've got to make what are called toothwoods, which is like the traditional type of toothbrush that they've been using since, the time of the Buddha. So that's taken out of this type of vine, and you have to split up the wood and really and turn it into these really nicely made toothwoods with a bit of soft like toothbrush on the top of it. And they take a lot of time, a lot of effort. So, we've got all this stuff going on before ordination. And so I was a novice doing all of this, and I wasn't getting much sleep. And so one morning, it was morning bell rang. I wake up and I'm just dead tired, like just dead to the world. And I just don't want to go to morning chanting. But the senior monk at the time, if you missed the morning chanting and went paid respects to him, he'd have this really smug grin on his face when you would do it. And so, yeah, that morning I woke up, didn't want to go, but I was just like, I'm not going to give him that satisfaction of paying respects to him and having that grin. So, it forced me to go and force myself to put forth that little extra effort, that little extra energy, that wirya. And so, having this group support really helps with that. The sixth one is Kanti, which is this patient or patience endurance. And this is really an important one. In the Ovada Patimokkha, the Buddha gave this really famous line, Kanti Paramang Tapo Titika. So the Kanti Parami is the supreme incinerator of defilements. And so this is something, especially in the monastery, we really, are forced to develop. And in Luang Por Chah's style of training, he really trained the monks in patience and to be patient. So he'd go kind of sometimes really above and beyond to push their patience. So, one of the ones you hear a lot of the senior monks talking about was he'd do stuff like right before the meal, because you only have the one meal a day. So, you're by the time it's mealtime, you're hungry, you're ready to go. And so the monks would have their bowls open and be sitting and contemplating their food. And then Luang Por Chah would start talking to someone because you can't start until he rings the bell. And he'd just start talking and talking and really pushing the monks to develop this patience, with their food. Or he'd do that with all different types of things, within the monastic life. So again, pushing us to really work on developing, this patience. And we can do it ourselves in our life. Say, if we're having, difficulties at work or difficulties in, say, driving, Winnipeg drivers, some of the the traffic out there, and really deciding like to see this as an opportunity to practice patience. Because again, if you're in one of these situations, and if all of a sudden you can switch it and start seeing it from a perspective of Dhamma and an opportunity to practice, an opportunity to develop one of these paramis, these spiritual qualities, all of a sudden it can just kind of flip and change the whole nature of the experience or the interaction. And it doesn't, and can really reduce the suffering you have then, instead of just gritting your teeth and just getting angry. You see this, oh, I'm actually developing these spiritual qualities. I had this when I was a junior monk. I had this one friend from another monastery. He was a Western monk, and he got really into this, and he was really got really enthusiastic about it. And he was saying it's almost like a video game where you've got a character and you're trying to charge them up and get ready to do something. And so, being able to see it in that that kind of light. So the seventh one is Sacha Barami, which again, it's usually translated as truthfulness. I prefer to translate it more as honesty. And this is one I know I talk about a lot, but this is really developing this quality of being honest with what we're doing, honest with our intentions. And really important is to be really honest with ourselves and be really honest with ourselves about ourselves, taking an honest look at ourselves. Because it's very easy for us to um, not take that really honest look, to really maybe delude ourselves or fool ourselves sometimes about ourselves, about where we're at, about what our motivations are, our intentions are to doing something. So it's really important to us to work on developing this and really trying to be honest with ourselves. It was that famous quote by Meichi Gao. She was saying, you can lie to the whole world if you want, but never lie to yourself. And so this one is really important to our in our practice. And that doesn't mean being brutally hard on ourselves, because again, being too hard on ourselves and can be dishonest as well too. When you're saying, "Oh, I'm terrible at everything," I just can't do this. That's maybe not actually that honest. It's maybe not that true. So just being able to honestly look at ourselves, where we're at, what works for us, what's not working for us, where we can improve, where we're actually strong already. So these are things, to really work on being honest with. And the next one is aditana. And so this ability, an aditana is like a resolution or determination. So this is this ability to, when we set our minds to something and determine to do something, like make those resolutions, that, we stick to it and never give up on it. And again, this is one you can see in life, those people who really just when they put their mind on something, they just go for it. Nothing stops them. They don't get distracted. They don't give up on it. And then, other people, you can see some who are always saying they're going to do something and they give up on it, right away. And so, again, this is one that the way to develop this Aditana Barami and this ability of mind to be able to make a resolution, make a determination, really stick to it is actually to just make them. And the more we make them and stick to them, the stronger that quality becomes. But on the flip side, if we are making determinations and we give up on them, that quality actually becomes weaker, and we just give up easier and easier every time. So to develop this, it's good to make resolutions or make these determinations that are achievable for us. So, if when Ajahn Isra, who's the abbot of Lumpur Biek's branch monastery, and is like Lumpur Biek's right-hand monk, he would teach us about this. he would say one of the ways to do it is when you sit meditation, for whatever period of time you're going to sit meditation, you just make a resolution for that. You make your determination, your adhitana. So if you're only going to sit half an hour or 45 minutes, you just determine, okay, for this period of time, I'm not going to get up. I'm just going to sit here. And one of the things you do find sometimes is that once you've made that determination, sometimes the defilements, the kilesas, get stirred up. And all of a sudden you make that determination. All of a sudden you want to move more and than you wouldn't before. So really making those and just sticking to them. And you can maybe push yourself a little bit. But it's important not to go overboard. Like, if you've never sat more than an hour, don't make a determination. Okay, when I sit now, I'm not going to get up for 6 hours. I'm going to do a 6 hour sit. It's important to do something you can do and maybe pushes yourself a little bit. And the ninth one is metta or loving kindness. And again, you can see this is one where you can see some people who already have that strong quality of metta, that strong metta barmi, and who just naturally seem to like exude loving kindness and that, they just naturally have it. And then you see some people who just naturally don't. So again, to develop this, we just work on developing loving kindness as much as we can, not just in our formal meditation, but in our daily life as well, too, bringing up that quality of mind of loving kindness and uh, developing loving kindness through our actions and our speech as well, too. And then the 10th and final one is equanimity, so upekkha. So this is this ability to, just be even. Our mind is unshaken and even in uh, in daily life and throughout our experiences. So this is kind of a quick overview or rundown of these 10 spiritual qualities, these 10 paramis. And like I was saying in the beginning, when I started off, I didn't see much importance to them. I had just kind of believed from those certain Dhamma teachers I had heard that, we just needed, it wasn't important. It was more of a bodhisattva thing. It was more maybe a Mahayana thing, or it didn't really come from the Buddha. But like I was saying, the longer I've been a monk and the longer I've practiced, the more importance I give these, and the more important I see them, and how much developing these qualities can really help us in our practice and in our daily lives. So I'd like to offer this to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this evening.